So we were just basically in a room together all day, and he was just have his radio and he'd be playing Latin music all day long. And that was great for me because I grew up listening to that. And then he was like, Winter, you're always banging on the table and you're hitting on the table. Why don't you go to East Harlem, Boys Harbor High School, and take some percussion lessons? You know, they give lessons with timbales, congas, and the basics of Latin music. Why don't you just go and do that? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that.
Who is Winterhawk Spencer?
Yeah, Winterhawk Spencer, that is me. Winterhawk is a name that I got in a naming ceremony years ago when I was like 21 years old because my grandfather's Native American. And that's something I felt very close to, still do. So I went to a naming ceremony for my grandfather's tribe when I was about 21 years old. And Winterhawk is the name that they gave me. And in his language, it would be pronounced Tawodi Gola. Tawodi means hawk, and Gola means winter. So that name I got later in my life, and I tend to use that in my everyday life, especially connected with my music and anything arts related when I'm expressing myself.
That's awesome. What tribe is your grandfather?
Cherokee.
Gotcha. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
Okay, I was born in Queens, New York City, Jamaica, Queens. And it's always funny because whenever I met people from the Caribbean, they say, where you from? I say, yeah, I'm from Jamaica. I said, Jamaica, Queens. So that's always a running joke with me and my friends that grew up around. But yeah, I was born in 1969. And I think that was one of the best times to grow up. Everybody says that their generation they grow up, but I think for music, that was absolutely fantastic. End of an era of the 60s and then the beginning of an era, the 70s and 80s when I grew up.
What kind of music did you hear around the house growing up?
Okay, this is has a lot to do with, you know, me being a musician today, because my mother and father, they loved Afro-Cuban music. They're not, but they just really loved it and they loved to dance. So my mother and father, when they were dating, they used to go hear a lot of Latin greats, Mario Balsa, Machito, Tito Puente, you know, performing at the Palladium or different places in New York City. It was probably a different name back then, but so when I was growing up around the house, my father had a very vast record collection. My father loved jazz, um, Latin music, and funk. So there was always a rotation. So in my house on Friday night was considered dance night. So every Friday, when my father got home from work, my father would put on his the Gerard turntable and hook it up to the speakers, and then he would just run the gamut of playing a lot of different types of music. Like I said, from Latin music to James Brown to Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker. So I was hearing that constantly growing up in the house. So when I was probably like around 7 or 8 years old, I used to borrow my father's record player and bring it to my room because he wasn't really playing it as often, just once a week. So he's like, yeah, if you take care of it, it's okay, no problem. So I started going through all his records and I started listening to jazz first. And I was listening to like Dizzy Gillespie and, you know, Art Tatum when I was 7, 8 years old. And I think that's pretty young to be listening to that type of music. And I remember my father coming in the room, was like, what are you listening to? He said, oh, and I was like, sorry, Dad, I was playing your records. He's like, no, no, no. I was just surprised you're listening to that music at your age. But he says, as long as you don't scratch my records, you can take care of it. You can listen to it. Don't worry, enjoy yourself. So music was always played around my house, and I really have to credit my father, to him, rest in peace, to that for the a wide range of music that he played and I grew up listening to.
Mm.
Now, as far as probably if I bring it forward a little bit, house music, I'm the youngest of two older brothers. So I'm just turned 55. My oldest brother is going to be 60 next week. So where I got my influence from house music came from my oldest brother. And he's 5 years older than me. So at the time, that's I would say when I was in high school at the time, around maybe 15 years old, 16 years old. You know, that time my older brother was going to the loft. and tracks, Paradise Garage, and I always heard him playing house music in his room. And he would be on WBLS, taping all the house music tracks off of WBLS. And I hear it constantly, but to tell you the truth, I hated the music. I didn't like it at all because at that time when I was in high school, that's when I started learning to play drums. That was the beginning of my musical career. I always wanted to play drums, so I started to learn to play drum set in high school. So I was really into rock music. I was heavy into like classic rock, Doors, Jimi Hendrix, East Indian music, as I will mention jazz, but I was really into rock music at the time when I was a high school student. So when I heard my brother's house music, I was like, what is that, man? That's corny. That's how can you even dance to that? It sounds like the same beat over and over again. So I just wasn't feeling it at all. But once again, I was still hearing it, on a consistent basis until my brother, moved out. But that was for, a good 5 or 8 years. He was constantly playing in the house, at that time. So it wasn't until I'm jumping forward a little bit, but later, probably when I got into probably when I met my wife, because she was into house music. And I remember the first time we went to Webster Hall, together, and it was kind of housey, but it was kind of a little bit like in the middle between techno and house. And I was like, yeah, this sounds familiar. My brother used to play this music. So I kind of want to impress her because she's a professional dancer. I'm not. I mean, I can dance, but she's professional. So I tried to do some moves to the music, and then yeah, later on, I started to say, wow, this music is not bad. I remember. Then I started listening to it more and started buying some tapes and stuff like that. And I just started to get into it, but it was just already in my head. But my epiphany is when I went to Body and Soul with my wife when they first started. I think that was probably back in the maybe 90s, I think something
Yeah.
around that time. Yeah, 90s. Yeah, when they first opened up, and there was hardly nobody there. It was really sparse because it was a brand new party, and that was the beginning of my house music journey, which still continues today. To answer your question.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
What drew you to drumming?
Okay, as I mentioned, my father was always playing a lot of Latin music in the house as well too, so that was a big influence on me listening to Latin music. Now, I don't have any Latin roots backgrounds, but that's just music my dad really liked, and it was really booming in the 1950s because the situation with Cuba, when Batista was still in power, the door was open for a lot of Cuban musicians to be able to come to the United States, and Cuban music was just a hit at that time during 1930s, 40s, and 50s, peaking in the 50s. So, but then when the situation changed with Castro, then most of the musicians they could not come anymore to the United States. But that's where the Puerto Rican population, which was growing in the 1950s and 60s in the South Bronx, in East Harlem, they picked up on a very great business opportunity as musicians, uh, where Americans were hungry for Latin music, but at that time, Cubans couldn't come anymore. So they just picked it up and ran with it, and then still kept the roots of the Afro-Cuban music, but coined the phrase salsa, which is a mixture of many different things, and then it just went on from there. So as hearing that growing up, I just loved to hear the percussion, and I always loved when I listened to jazz music, drummers taking a solo. So, but trumpet was my first instrument when I was in elementary school, but my brothers made fun of me so much I sound like a dying elephant, so that didn't last long. So I gave that up. But when I got to high school, that's when I decided to take my first drumming class because I always wanted to do it. So as a freshman, I stayed with it, and my teacher was an amazing jazz drummer, and he really saw a talent in me. And me being a teacher myself, teaching as well, the great thing about the teacher is discovering when a student has talent and they don't know it yet. So that's the job of a teacher, is getting someone to see their potential that they don't even know that they have. And he was a great teacher, and I wish I can contact him with him today, but I don't even know where he is. But anyway, he's
What's
the
his
one
name?
that his name was last name was Kushkinian, Joseph Kushkinian. He was from Armenia. Never forget that. And he was amazing jazz drummer. So shout out to him, wherever he is in the world today. But that started my journey in drumming. Then after high school, I went to college for a little bit, and then I joined the chamber group at Malloy College in Rockville Center. And classical was something I always enjoyed listening to also. I didn't put that in the mix. So I joined a classical group for about 2 years, learning to play timpani, snare drum, crash cymbals, and I could read music, from high school, learning to play drums, notation. But that was a whole nother level for me. So that took me in a direction for focus as a musician, technique wise, and being sensitive to other musicians. Because being a drummer, you have to really be the timekeeper, but also you got to be really balanced of watching and listening to everybody else, not to overpower. So classical music really helped me a lot with that. Then after college, I was started to go to work, and I was working side jobs here and there. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, what direction. So I got a part-time job working at Service Merchandise on Fifth Avenue and 49th Street. That was right in the jewelry district. So I was like quality control in the jewelry department. So that's what I was doing. But the guy I was working with, he was from Puerto Rico, and we were in the office together, and we were in the receiving department. So no one can get in there because there was a lot of security, because all the diamonds and gold would be delivered to our department. So we were just basically in a room together all day, and he was just have his radio and he'd be playing Latin music all day long. And that was great for me because I grew up listening to that. And then he was like, Winter, you're always banging on the table and you're hitting on the table. Why don't you go to East Harlem, Boys Harbor High School, and take some percussion lessons? They give lessons with timbales, congas, and the basics of Latin music. Why don't you just go and do that? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that because I've been playing drums since high school. Probably I'll be able to switch over. And I went to Boys Harbor in East Harlem. I think that's on 100 and maybe 8th Street or 10th Street on the east side. And that was another beginning of another journey. I grew up around playing drums, drum set, but then this was really starting to learn to play Latin percussion. And I really enjoyed to do that. I stayed at that school after work. I would go there for lessons for about 4 years, and learned all the basics and fundamental of Afro-Cuban style rumba and salsa, playing with a band. And that splintered off going into learning other different forms of percussion. There was a school downtown Manhattan on Lafayette Street called Ferretta's. And that was a place that where was a dance studio for Brazilian, Afro-Cuban, and African as well too. And that was a hangout spot for me after I was already got bit by playing Latin percussion in East Harlem. So I used to hang out at Ferretta's, and then I started to get exposed to playing Brazilian music, samba. That was another direction. Learned to play that on different various percussion instruments. And then one day I saw a Haitian class. I was like, well, my neighborhood, there was like always a lot of Caribbeans around me, next door to me. My best friends was Haitian across the street. Then down the block was Jamaican, and another one from Barbados on the other side of me, and then others from down south because my family's from down south. But I saw this Haitian class, and I was like, I never heard this type of drumming before, and it just captured me. So I got very interested in that. Then that's another direction. I started to play traditional like roots Haitian music, which is just all percussion, which is the roots of it for come from the belief system of voodoo. So that's where it comes from. But originally the roots of it are from Dahomey, Benin, and Nigeria, and some Congo thrown into there. So that was quite another direction of percussion, because that was more cultural as opposed to playing Latin music, and band work was just with a band and other instruments, but this was getting more cultural. So then after playing with Haitian music and Haitians for a while, I went in other directions, and I started going to another class in Ferretta's, that dance school, with Africans from West Africa playing djembe. And it was brothers there from Guinea and from Ivory Coast. And I saw how they were playing djembe. I was like, whoa, this is like their hands are moving so fast, and the different types of sounds that they get from that drum. I never heard anything like that before. That was amazing. So I went in that direction. I started to study up under cats from Ivory Coast, from Guinea, and then other like first generation Africans that were born here, that moved here from from West Africa. And because that was booming during the 1960s, a lot of Africans came here because of the Black Power movement during the 60s. So it was a good timing, Black Americans getting into their culture. And at that time, I think the Ballet Africain from Guinea, which was under Sekou Touré, who was the president of Guinea at that time. It was such a hit in the United States. A lot of Africans that were in the Ballet Africain, they didn't want to go back. They stayed in the United States and would make a living of it, teaching Black Americans and Caribbeans how to play djembe and the structure of West African traditional music. So that direction of African music still going on today. And the roots of it, I was learning in New York City. But my background is kind of various as far as percussion is concerned. Drums was my first instrument, to answer your question, but then it went on into journey classical after that. And then after classical into percussion, which stemmed from Haitian, Brazilian, Afro-Cuban, and West African, mainly Guinea and Ivory Coast. And then also probably most recently, since I've been in Japan, Congolese, which is the roots of where the conga drum came from Congo. And there's quite a few Congolese, some musicians living here in Tokyo, and they have a group, and I play with them sometimes, often as well too. So that's kind of a wide variation of my background as far as music is concerned for different styles of music.
Wow. All I can say is wow. Awesome. Clubs. What
Right.
club did you go to back in the day besides Body and Soul?
Okay. Yeah, vinyl was the place. Of course, love to go there. But by the time I got into going clubs, that time I was already in my 20s, like 25, 26. So Paradise Garage was gone by that time, because this is like mid 90s. And of course, Loft was gone, by that time. But I was going to Twilo sometimes. Twilo I went to. And there was another club, I'm trying to think of the name of it, all the way on 12th Avenue, right close to Twilo.
The
If I'm
Tunnel?
talking, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, Tunnel. Tunnel I used to go to because they used to have house music there on, I think maybe Fridays, either Fridays or Saturdays. And that was upstairs, because the Tunnel was like maybe two different floors or something like that. Or they just had it in a certain room. And my friend Jerry Santos, he used to spin there. He wasn't really a popular DJ, but it's a friend of mine. Sometimes he would spin there. And I used to go to the Tunnel. That was one place. There was another club I went to down on 14th, around 14th Street, was Sapphire Lounge. I don't even know if they're still there anymore.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Used to go there. Brooklyn, there were some clubs in Brooklyn, but I really didn't go to Brooklyn that much because I was born in Queens, so Brooklyn is another vibe. So probably I guess I was too chicken to go to Brooklyn too late in the night, because like I said, if you're from the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, they each have their completely different vibe.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I was growing up and people would ask me, yo, bro, where you from? We're like, yeah, I'm from Queens, because Queens was considered to be softies, you didn't get no rep. The only thing that we got a rep for, because I was from Jamaica, Queens, was all the best rappers, well, I would say the beginning, the roots of the rappers came from there. My neighbors were Run DMC. My older brother went to high school with them. I used to see LL Cool J on Farmers Boulevard all the time before he was blowing up. Salt and Pepper, they were from around there, among a whole host of others. But at least Run DMC and LL Cool J, I used to see them in the neighborhood because I live right next to Hollis all the time. But getting back to the clubs, I didn't go out a lot. I wasn't, by the time I got really into the club scene, a lot of those major clubs I wish I could have gone to, they had already closed by that time. And unfortunately, the crack epidemic was so vast, the crack epidemic and the AIDS epidemic during the 80s and the early 90s, it just wiped a lot of people out. And a lot of people were just recovering, those that were still alive and those that could still go out, but the clubs had kind of been like rebranded in a way. House music was still going on, but it was a new generation and younger people were getting into it, but the vibe was a little different. Drugs were still always there, but I don't think it was as, prevalent in the old days, because my older brother used to tell me, even though you didn't like house music back then, but he said, I'm kind of glad that you weren't into it because the drug scene at those clubs back then was just so crazy. He wouldn't want me to get caught up in that. So it's better that I got into it a little bit later. And then the old heads that are still around, that are still going to clubs, they've recovered if they were or were not on drugs, but they're glad they still have that vibe, the clubs to still to go to. But those, just to name a few, like I said, there's another one in there, Nells. Used to go to Nells on
14th
yeah, 14th Street. But I can't remember what night of the week it was, but it
Monday
was
night.
had Monday night. Yeah, house music there. The Monday and Thursday night. And who did I see there? I saw what's his name? Streef there perform one time because my best friend's friend, that's his uncle. So, and I remember I went to his studio after school one time and met him in the
Mhm.
studio. And I was like, and I was into rock and roll at that time. Wow, this dude looks like a rock and roll. I was like, what kind of music does this dude make? He looks far out, man. So it was nice meeting him, but I barely remember that. But yeah, Nels was a place I went to on the regular for the house music, as well too. So that's probably the gist of it, of the clubs I can remember too. There was some pop-up spots, but they only had like house music there, maybe an event wise. I think there was another party called Milk on Mondays, but I can't remember what the name of that club was. But that was like a gay night, for that club. But the music was crazy that night because I used to go with my girlfriend, who's now my wife at the time, because a lot of her friends were dancers and were gay, and they used to bring her all over the place. So she said, Winter, I'm gonna bring you to these spots and the music is great. I was like, yeah, if you say it's good, I'll trust you because she's been in the scene longer than I have. So those were some great spots, but unfortunately, a lot of those places are gone now because what I experience is, for my generation of house music dancers, they're not drinkers, and the club has to make money off the bar, and if you don't drink, then you pay your entrance fee to get in, but then the club takes a hit because the bar is not making any money. Somebody may have one drink, but people are not going to those clubs to get smashed like back in the days. And then also, drinks are not cheap. They cost money, and people that going into house music, they, even if they weren't on the guest list and they had to pay 10-15 bucks to get in, which we would say that's a lot of money back in those times, which essentially really isn't, because if you're really enjoying yourself, something that makes you so happy, you should be willing to pay that money. That shouldn't be a thought. But anyway, those clubs suffered because people were not drinking at the bar, and I understand that. By me playing in clubs and places like that, I get the dynamic of that. But I remember I used to, when I was in the shelter, I didn't want to pay money even for the water. I would go to the bathroom and I would put my head underneath the faucet in the bathroom. I would drink all night from the faucet in the bathroom, for a long time. God help me. I hope I didn't get lead poisoning from that. But I just didn't want to pay that money for those drinks, even for the water at the juice at the shelter. But I wasn't the only one doing it. Everybody else was pretty much doing it too. But probably my mainstay of the place I would go to most of the time was the shelter, down on I think it was Canal
Hubert, Hubert Street.
Hubert Street, that's right. And I would pull doubles. I would go to the shelter and I would get in there like around 1 o'clock in the morning, and one or two, or sometimes I get there a little later, maybe 3 or 4, and then stay till like 11 o'clock in the morning, come home, go to sleep for a couple hours, and then go to Body and Soul on Sunday and pull a double. And by the next day, Monday morning, I was walking like an old man because I couldn't walk because my legs would be completely done from dancing so much. But that I would pretty much do on the regular, shelter on Saturday night, and then Body and Soul on Sunday from like 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Wow. How did you started drumming in the house music community?
Okay. I remember I had met Jepte I had met Jeff Day not at a house music event. I had met him at that another place when that place called Feretta's down on Lafayette Street, that dance studio, drum and dance studio, when they closed, there was another place that opened up on 14th Street called Janiba's Drum and Dance Company. And the brother that owned that company, Geneva, he's from Martinique, and he opened up that school around 14th Street. And that was a great place also because they had everything there too. Brazilian, Haitian, Afro-Cuban, West African, jazz, hip hop, dance classes there. So he was a very smart businessman, and provided a necessity that was not being fulfilled in New York City. And as a even though people would go there to drum and dance, but it was also a meeting spot where like that people who are house music dancers, they would come there too, because a lot of the house music dancers that I would see in the shelter, I was like, wow, the moves that they're doing is like, this looks like they're doing Sabah from Senegal, or this looks like they're doing a dance from Guinea, like Kuku or Lamban. It looks like West African dance steps. And then I would see those people in the club, and I was like, "Hey, I just saw you at Geneva's, the African dance studio." Now it makes sense. That's why you're dancing like that. It says, "Yeah, they're very, very closely connected." So I had met Jepte at Geneva's, and because I was in a Haitian drum class, and then we just started vibing, talking. Maybe I might have seen him at the shelter before, but we never really speak because he's a really tall dude, so he's not easy to forget. And I'm not so tall, so he looks huge to me. So I was like, "Yeah, I saw him at the shelter, and we talked." He was like, "Are you Haitian?" I was like, "No, I'm not, but I just love playing roots music, and I'm studying right now." So we started to talk, and he was like, "Yeah, you know what? Let me introduce you to some people down at the shelter, and I can't make any promises, but just we can just see what happens." And I met some people, that some Spanish cats in shelter, and kind of one thing led to another, and then I remember I met his nickname was Papo, and he was like, "Yeah," he says, "I know I seen you playing congas in Central Park sometimes," and I didn't know him, but I was used to play congas in Central Park, with some of my friends. And he said, "Yeah, I used to see you there." So you know what? We're going to have an event. He says, "Me, my friend Nikki LeBoy, and some other cats. We're going to do something for Louis Vega at the here at the shelter. He's going to spin here. So why don't you just come?" So I came, I showed up. He said, "You don't even got to bring a conga." He says, "We got all that." And then I played, got in there. It was really nice set that we did together with the music. Then I got to meet Louis and introduce. I had seen Louis many times before, but never really had a chance to speak to him. And one thing led to another. It was like, uh, we have the Winter Music Conference coming up. And Papa was like, Louis wants me to play down at the Winter Music Conference for him. I was like, bet. I love house music. It's going to be where? In Miami. That's a win-win situation. I had never been to that before, and I even never even heard about it. So I saved my money, because that was, back in I think the year before, in probably like November, December, when they had that event for Louis Vega. And then the Winter Music Conference was in March the following year. So I saved my money, got my airline ticket, got down there, met Papo down there, and my friend, my boy Nick, and we played for the event, House of Roomba. It was a blast. That I had such an amazing time. I mean, the vibe from New York, it was just transferred down there, but just in such a beautiful, warm environment with the ocean right in front of you. And I just fell in love not only with the house music that I grew up listening to with my brother, but also the atmosphere, the type of people that were there. In all the years I have been going to house music events in New York, as well as Tokyo, but I'll just focus on New York City. And that's over maybe 15 years. I have never seen a fight. I have never seen an altercation. If someone bumped into each other, someone stepped on someone's foot, everybody said, "Excuse me." And I have been to hip hop clubs. I've been to techno clubs. I've been to all kind of clubs in New York City, and I've seen everything. I remember when I went to, I think it was 4040 Club, opened by Jay-Z. And this was back probably in the late 90s. And I remember I used to see him and Beyonce in the club just chilling. But Jay-Z was already on his way anyway, but he still had enough money, to open up his own club, and it was selective. But I knew the bouncer who was at the door, so I was always able to get in there. But sometimes there might be a little altercation in that kind of club, here and there. But at the house music events, probably it's happened, but I have never seen it. And that's why I love that scene so much, is because the vibration of people that are into that type of music, those are the type of people that attracts. And by me being a musician, what you sing about, what your intention is, that goes into the music. Whatever your state of mind is when you're creating music, that energy goes into the music. So when people start wilding out and they're listening to certain type of music, yo, I just check, what are you listening to? What are they singing about? What is the vibe of the music? What was their motivation behind creating that type of music? That's the energy that they're putting into it. And I'm not saying you have to be a spiritual person or anything like that. That's just, you know, it is what it is. That's how music affects people. Why you feel good when you listen to it, or you don't feel good, you feel some kind of emotion, because that's the intention of the person who created the music. But yeah, to put that on in a nutshell, that's kind of how I got started drumming in the house music scene. It was by meeting Jepte, and I love his music, and he's fantastic. And he introduced me to his music. He said, "Well, if you play Haitian music, then you got to listen to some of my tracks, man, because I got those drums and the music." And when I heard that, I was like in seventh heaven. Love house music, love Haitian roots music, and those two together. Yeah, that was a win-win for me.
What other house music parties did you play at? I remember you from Ashe as well with Kat.
Yeah, I played not a whole lot, but I played the Ashe parties with Kat. And also there was the I think it was a Circle Line. They did a Circle Line house party. I did that a couple of times. I think that was with yeah, with Louis Vega as well too, and House of Roomba. And before I moved to Japan, I was always, going to Body and Soul. So I knew, Joe and Francois and Danny. And then I was telling Joe, I'm going to move, to Japan, eventually. So when I moved and I saw that they were coming over here to play, and the last time probably I saw them, I believe they played at that club Valfari. I believe they might have played there, and just around the time I went there, just around the time just before they had closed. And that was an amazing club as well too. So there was another club, Yellow, um, and in Tokyo. I'm sure you know that one. That's closed now, but Joe Clausel was doing an event there at that club, and he asked me to do not only play with him percussion wise for the party, but to lead a drum circle for about 15 minutes, because he was going to break the music down and do a drum circle for about 15, 20 minutes. And then he was going to put the music back on. So I arranged it and, arranged some different drummers to come. It was about 10 or 15, of them. Everybody was Japanese, of course. And I arranged a nice rhythm for everybody to play and for all the dancers to vibe with for about 15 minutes. That went great. Then after that, Joe went back to the music, and then I went back to playing with him. So I did that event with him at Yellow. Then I did another event once or twice at Body and Soul at Agaha. And that was probably maybe the first time they had played there. Yes, it was. I remember that. And I became more tighter with Ariel than Joe, because I remember after Body and Soul all the time, I would go out with Ariel to get something to eat at the diner across, around the corner. And he just wanted to rap, and we had a lot of things in common. So we would hang out, always after Body and Soul, on Sundays. And then as I, moved, we just still kept in touch. And then Ariel would always hit me up on the guest list, because I would ask Joe sometime, but so many people know Joe Clausel, and it's impossible. He can only have a guest list that's only so long. So sometimes I just didn't feel like bother him anymore, because, it was like so many people. But when I got to Japan, guest list is a good thing, because clubs is like 3 times more expensive to get in. Like the Body and Soul ticket is like, now I think it's about equivalent about $100. Yeah, yeah, it's about $100, $110 for the ticket. And if you want the VIP area, that's like more than that. It's like maybe 150 or 160, something like that. But they have to absorb the cost of like travel expenses and hotel. I understand that. But in any case, I was hanging out with Ariel, And then when he came to Japan, we played at Agaha. I was performing with this singer called, his name is Joy, Joi, and Joy has a lot of good house tracks as well too. And he's been in the house music scene here in Tokyo for quite a while. And I remember asking Ariel, what did you think about the sound system in Agaha? Because they have amazing speakers in there. The speakers are like top of the line. I can't remember the name of them, but they're amazing. And he told me, he said that the system is great, it sounds fantastic, but it's not really designed for house music. It's more designed for techno, drum and bass, and possibly hip hop, but more like techno and hard music. But overall, it was a great party. So those are probably just a few of the places off the top of my head that I can remember in New York. Just the boat parties, the Circle Line, with Louis Vega, as well as House of Rumor at Shelter from time to time, and the Ashe parties.
How did you meet your wife?
Huh. Okay. Yeah. Um, Interesting story. When I was playing percussion for dance studio called Broadway Dance Center, on Broadway and what is that, 54th Street, 56th Street. I was playing for some percussion for warm up for dancers. And before I got to that point, I remember I was playing percussion in Central Park with some friends of mine, just hustling, making some money. Bill Cosby was jogging. He jogged by. He was like, "Wow, you guys sound good. You guys doing good." And then we were like, "Wow, that's Bill Cosby." And that was the time of the Cosby Show. So he came back by again, and he was like, "Wow, you guys are still here. You guys sound fantastic." Says, "Can I sit in?" I said, "Sure." So I got up and I let him play my conga, and he played for a little bit. And Bill Cosby, he is a very good jazz drummer. Truth be told, he plays drums very, very well. So we were just ecstatic that Bill Cosby sat in with us and played, but there were no cell phones at that time. So I have no documentation of that back in the 90s. But anyway, when he left, me and my buddies were like, wow, must have been a good omen, because Bill Cosby stopped by, and he stopped by and sat in with us. So then after he left, another guy came by and was like, "You know what? You guys sound fantastic. I'm finished jogging." It was this white guy. He says, "My brother's doing a convention at the Hilton Hotel, just very near here. And it's a sneaker convention. We have some dancers, but it would be great if you guys can just play just for like 3 minutes, and I'll give you each $100." We're like, "Oh man, is this guy like, telling the truth or whatever?" Because everybody says everything all the time. So he's like, "I'll be back in 5 minutes." He says, "I just need to go and get something to drink, and I'm coming back." Truth be told, he came back. It was me and two other friends of mine. We went to the guy helped us with our drums out of the park, got us into a cab. We went to the Marriott, and lo and behold, there was a sneaker convention there. Nike, Adidas, all of them, Fila, they were all there. So he took us to the Nike booth where he was doing his uh the convention there. So basically, this dude, he was playing drum set to a track, and there were dancers in front of him. So we set up our drums, the congas, and we played to the track, and then we did it like 3 minutes. Boom, boom, boom. We each got like $100. We went back to the park. We got some beers. We chilled. We relaxed even more. But before I left the gig, I got the guy's card. And then the guy called me the next day, who gave us the gig, the drummer. He said, "One of the dancers wants to hire you for a dance class." And her name was Michelle Asef, dancer at Broadway Dance Center. And I contacted her. She said, "Bring your conga. I want you to play warm up for my dance class." That I did, played warm up for a dance class. I got in there into that dance studio. They hired me as a drummer to play for some of their classes. So speeding up a little bit, maybe within a year of playing at that school, I started to play for this one dance class. And there was always some Japanese dancers in there. But what I noticed was like, whoever's in the front is a really good dancer and knows the choreography. Whoever's in the back, they probably don't know. That's just common sense. But I always see this Japanese drummers that stayed Japanese dancers that stayed in the back, but they were really good. I was like, why are they in the back? They should be in the front. But maybe it's a culture thing because they're like humble and stuff. But this one Japanese chick was in the front. And I was like, wow, okay, she's got courage. And of course, she's good. She's really good. and she's cute. So I had my eye on her. But my rule was I never wanted to holler at anybody in the dance studio because that was my place of work. I really didn't want to do that. If things go left, you know, this is not a good look. And it was great because most of the guys that were in there were gay anyway, so there was no competition for me at all. So most of the chicks was waiting for me to holler at them. They were like, "Why this dude's not hollering at anybody?" But I just wouldn't do it. But anyway, I had my percussion set up and I had a tambourine on the floor. And they were doing go to the front, then come around, go to the front and come around. But then this Japanese chick, she came around and then she tripped over my tambourine. So she says, and she kind of fell into me. She was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," And I laughed because they all thought I was so serious, because I really wasn't talking to anybody. And I was like, "No, no, no, don't worry about it. It's cool. It's all right." He said, "Are you okay?" He says, "Yeah." And then after the class was over, she came again and apologized. And she was like, "What's your name?" He says, "Oh, my name is Kaori. I'm from Japan, of course." And says, "Yeah, I see you in this dance class all the time." It's like, you know what? I don't really want to holler at this girl, but she's looking too good and I got good vibes with her. Let me just get her number. So I got a phone number and then, we kept in touch and we went out for like coffee like the first time, like after dance class and just talk. But I really liked her, but I got the vibe that she got a boyfriend because I'm not getting those vibes back. So I just kept it straightly platonic. We went out for coffee a couple more times, like after dance class, and just remained friends. And then a little later on after that, she she mailed a letter to my house because she had my address. She asked my address one day because she's like, "I want to send you something from Japan." Maybe that was it. Can't really remember, but she sent me a letter in the mail and she expressed herself. She said, "I'm really attracted to you, but I was in a relationship at the time and I was breaking up with the guy. And if I start a relationship with you would have been too complicated." So she said, I have to finish a relationship before I start another one. So I'm completely finished. I don't know if you have a girlfriend or not, but I'm available. And I was like, woo! I was so pumped because when I read that letter that day, I was in an African dance company called Batoto Yetu, and I was playing percussion for them, which I didn't mention, but I mentioned now. We were playing the premiere for Muhammad Ali's documentary called When We Were Kings, and it was premiering at Radio City Music Hall. And our dance company was the opening before they showed the movie. And Muhammad Ali, Michael Jackson, or everybody was there in the audience, and that was an absolute blast. And when I was playing the African drums in the back, I was playing them. Everybody was like, "Winter, today your speed is super high, man. Why are you playing so fast?" I was like, "I'm so happy you guys don't know." So I was just happy that that was the beginning of my wife, my girlfriend at the time, later to be girlfriend, telling me how she felt about me. And then one thing led to another. We started dating, and then and eventually we got married, and then got married in New York, and then decided to move to Japan. And that's been 18 years living in Japan. But being married to her, it will be this year, September, coming up September 30th, 26 years.
What? 26 years married.
Yeah, this September 30th will be 26 years.
Wow, congratulations. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you. That'll be September 30th in New York and then November 29th that we got married in Japan of the same year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um, how does Japan receive you?
Yeah, anybody you ask, you'll probably get, a pretty good review of that, but every individual is different. I can only speak from my personal experience. Being that I've traveled to Italy, Germany, England, Portugal, Canada, Mexico, um, Korea, and probably I said Germany as well as there too. So I've been to not a whole lot of countries, but I have traveled, to different countries around the world and um exposed to a lot of different people. So it really made me learn about myself and how people see me as myself as an individual who don't even know me. Just I may have been the first Black person that they met, one to one as personally or talk to. And some experiences were good, some experiences were not good. That's just life. But when I got to Japan, um, I would have to say, before I moved to Japan, my mom told me, carry yourself like an ambassador, because you may go to certain places where you travel in Japan, you may be the very first Black person they interact with, and how they perceive you may be how they perceive Black people as a whole. So she said, I know that's a lot of weight to carry on your shoulders, and I'm not even saying you have to do it, but just try your best and carry yourself like an ambassador, and how we raised you, because I was raised with both parents, my mom and dad, until they both passed away. And they were married for over 50 years. But to answer that question, I would say 97% of my experience in Japan is great. It's fantastic. I mean, you're always going to meet a percentage of people that are idiots, and I say there are idiots everywhere. So when I have a bad experience, or not even altercation, because I've never gotten into any altercations here in Japan, but when I have any bad experience with other people, it's just they're low vibrational human beings. They're not Japanese people being mean to me because I'm Black. Maybe that may be in their mindset, but I look beyond that, because my experience of Japanese people who live in Japan is absolutely fantastic. But like I said, you're always going to meet some people that just are, that are ignorant. And I just take that with a grain of salt. But moving around in Japan, the way things work, the way things operate, has affected me in a way to keep my word. Um, Japan, like when you don't keep your word and you say something, you don't do something. What I really like about it is people won't scream on you. They'll just be like, "Oh, okay, you couldn't make it." You say, "Oh, sorry, man. I saw it was gonna come yesterday at 10 o'clock, but I had something to do and I just didn't show up." They'll be like, "Oh, yeah, yeah. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." Or in Japanese say, "Iyo, zenzen daijoubu yo. Muni shinai yo. Muni shinai. Daijoubu." So which means it's okay, don't worry about it. But in their speaking Japanese and living here, there's intonations in the way they say it, and I can pick up on that, even though they're saying it's okay, but their intonation is like, I screwed up. It's not okay. And they won't tell you that, because having direct confrontations is something culturally they just don't really do. You have to read between the lines a lot. So that's really helped me as an individual to feel things out and feel people out without speaking, and really being more responsible as an individual. When I say I'm going to do something, to really keep my word to do it, and to really, if I can't do it, to really make sure to cover all bases, that no one feels slighted, even if I didn't mean it that way, that to cover all bases to do that. But Japan society had a really good effect on me, on my life as an individual and growing, probably at the time that I moved here, because I moved here when I was in my late 30s, almost going to be 40. So I think that was a good time of life mentally to be ready to live in this type of country, because Japan is great for people that have visited here, such as you've been there, but to live here is a different story, because there's a lot of rules, there's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of things that the round hole goes into the round hole, and this is really, everything is calculated and decided. So maybe for people that may be a bit excessive, for some people, or just too much. But the other side of the coin is, being that I'm a foreigner, they don't really expect that of me. They don't expect me to do that. Even if I don't do it, they'll just say, shogunai, which in English means, yeah, what can we do? Or c'est la vie in French, don't worry about it. He's a foreigner. He doesn't understand our customs, so don't get angry. Even if I've been living here for 25 years, still the reaction is like, even if I don't do something, they don't expect me to do it. But if I do it, they're like, wow, it's really great. This person really learned about our culture and really respects us and is really doing it. So to answer your question, I enjoy living here. I have a lot of peace of mind. It's very safe. I've really dropped my New York City, carrying one bag on the shoulder on my left, and then have my right arm free in case I gotta knock somebody out. Somebody wants to roll up on me and, rob me or something like that. That level has just been dropped so much, just been in chill mode. That level of stress is just really not there for me, anymore. So when I go back to visit New York, I have to really switch on. And it's just like, I've been living here so long, I've adapted myself, that it's stressful for me to be back in that environment for too long. When I'm there in New York for 2 weeks, I get with my peeps, I go to house music clubs, I connect. But then after about like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I'm ready to go back. This is pretty much my home, or at least for now. This vibe is really works very well for me, to answer your question.
Thank you. I know we got like a few minutes left.
Yeah.
Mm. One final question. What advice would you give to the next generation that's passionate about drumming and wants to learn in this new age of the internet and digital? Like, what advice would you give? What advice would you give your 21-year-old self or 17-year-old self today who wants to like
Mm.
next winter,
Great question. That's fantastic. Yeah. All I could say is I would just impart some of the knowledge that my teachers have imparted on me, but just updated 2.0 because of technology. I say use technology to do your research. If let's say you want to play percussion, use the technology to research um, old heads that have come way before all of us, 1950s, 1960s, and even further back than that, depending on what style of drumming you want to use. But use the internet, YouTube, to do research and to learn from as many different sources as you can, especially if you're going to study percussion. And you can go back and check many things that are on the internet now. West Africa, Central Africa, because Africa gets looped in as a whole, but it's a continent. So, and each country has their own diverse set of rhythms, particular to that country. So I would say research, research, research. If you're not a person that's really into research, but at least do the basics and know the roots of the music that you're playing and where it comes from. So if someone asks you a question, because when you play percussion, people are going to talk to you. They're going to ask you about your instrument. And I don't say you have to be a historian, but know a little bit of the history of the instrument you're playing, where it comes from, the roots of that music, whether it be jazz, hip hop, funk, blues, and the roots of that being from Nigeria, Congo, Benin, and then how it evolved, and just at least know the basics. And also get up under a good teacher, and be humble and learn from as many good teachers as you can and absorb information. And your learning will never stop, even though you've come to a point where you want to start playing gigs and you're ready to be a professional, but your practice never ends. So don't ever stop practicing. I'm still practicing myself too. It's a never ending process. And just continue to be open and express yourself through your instrument without ego. I always say, my grandmother say ego stands for easing God out, whether you're a religious person or not, but be true to yourself, express yourself through your instrument, and let your joy heal and be a wonderful medicine that everybody's in front of you listening to and enjoying. Because as you're enjoying to play your drum, let the people enjoy it. And by seeing their faces, it's going to be a symbiotic relationship between you and the audience together. Give to them, remove all ego, and you're playing for the people and to uplift and to heal people. And just that would be my best advice I can give to the next generation coming up.
Thank you. And one more final question. I lied.
Sure.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Yeah. I think I would want my legacy to be I'm a kind of a very, I wouldn't say like a quiet person or humble person, but I would like people to remember me as Winter, as a drummer who was able to perform in many different circles. So when people say, "Oh, I remember this guy drummer named Winter," yeah, he was a jazz drummer. He was a funk, heavy metal, Afro-Cuban. He played a lot of different styles of music, and he was able to move in so many different circles that a lot of other people were not able to do. And if anybody can remember anything about me, that is what I would like to be remembered.
Brother, thank you so much. This was a fantastic interview. I appreciate you. All
Okay,
right, take
brother.
care. All right, peace.
Peace. All right now. Bye-bye.